3 years ago, my partner and I bought our first home. It was a modest place, and our neighbors were wonderful. Life was good. So good, in fact, that 18 months later, when those neighbors decided to sell their house, which was larger and had more luxuries like a driveway, a garage, and a bathtub, we jumped at the chance. We bought their house and put our old one right next door up for sale. After reading several motivation letters from potential buyers, we chose a Polish couple. They only spoke in English to us and not in Dutch like we did, but everything seemed normal. They asked for some tips about the house, and we had some pleasant small talk. But looking back, that was the calm before the storm. Even before the big incidents, things felt off. We started experiencing bizarre disturbances at the strangest hours. Sometimes at midnight, we'd hear heavy banging or incredibly loud music blasting through the walls without warning. It wasn't constant, but it was enough to make us feel like we didn't truly know who was living a few feet away. The first red flag appeared when the neighbor came home with severe damage to both sides of his car. It looked like he had scraped against a guardrail at a high speed on both sides. When we asked what happened, he gave a clumsy excuse. A concrete pole on one side and a trailer taking a turn too wide on the other. We chose to believe him, even though the math didn't add up. One evening around 6 p.m., the neighbor called us in a total panic. He claimed people were outside his house turning security cameras away. He begged us to check it out and call the police. We looked, and sure enough, 2 men were breaking in. We called the cops immediately. It took the cops 20 minutes to arrive, so the burglars were already gone. The neighbor's wife came racing into the street, parked her car, and frantically ran inside to her sweet little French bulldog and the police, who were at the time already there. When I was walking my dog curiously, I saw the husband park his car 3 streets away and walk to the scene as if he was hiding the vehicle from the police. But that thought didn't occur to me at the moment. Later, when we checked the doorbell footage, we saw the burglar standing there before the break-in, calmly discussing which house to target in Polish. Nothing was stolen. No one was caught. I told the police it felt like a setup, but I never heard back. A week later, I was at a housewarming party when my partner texted me. "The music next door is insanely loud again." A few minutes later, he called me and his tone changed to pure terror. The neighbor's car had just come tearing through our front garden and slammed into the neighbor's own front door. 2 men were frantically loading the car with high-end electronics, like flat-screen TVs, professional speakers, and other expensive gear. And they looked like the same men from the week before. This time the police were a lot quicker. They arrived in exactly 7 minutes. The officers intercepted the men while they were still loading the car. When asked for ID, the men claimed they didn't have any. Then things got surreal. The man behind the wheel looked the officer in the eye and claimed to be my neighbor, using my neighbor's actual name. But there was a catch. In the 9 months that they lived next to us, my neighbor had never spoken a single word of Dutch. This man, however, spoke fluent Dutch with a thick Polish accent. Realizing the game was up, the men slammed the car into gear and a violent pursuit followed through our quiet streets until the police managed to box them in and arrest them. But my partner could still hear movement inside our neighbor's house. The police went back in and dragged out a 3rd suspect. As we were inside our own home with an officer to report the damage to our property, the doorbell rang. We turned around and there he was, the actual neighbor. He was unrecognizable. His face was a swollen, bloody mess. One eye was swollen shut, his mouth was torn, and his arm hung at a useless angle, covered in what looked like defensive stab wounds. He looked feral, aggressive, and broken. The police officer tried to intervene, but the neighbor flat out refused to file a report or cooperate. Since the victim wouldn't speak, the officer had no choice but to send him back to his house. Later that night, the neighbor rang our bell again. He was trembling. He confessed that he cheated on his wife, and he claimed that she had sent people to take him out. He begged to sleep at our house. Terrified and wanting no part of this underworld drama, we refused. My partner offered to drive him to the hospital instead. We dropped him off at 10:30 p.m., telling him we were staying elsewhere for the night because we no longer felt safe. But we didn't stay elsewhere. We went home, locked every door, and tried to breathe. At around 1 a.m., our dog started growling. A specific low growl he only uses when someone's at the door. We checked the doorbell camera, and there he was. The neighbor was back from the hospital, standing on our porch, ringing the doorbell multiple times. We sat in the dark, watching the screen in silence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a car turned onto the street. The neighbor panicked. He scrambled off the porch and hid behind our cars in the driveway, crouching in the shadows. Watching this bloodied, broken man lurking in the dark behind our own cars was one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen. The car stopped, and a woman got out. It was his wife. She walked toward her front door, paused, and glanced at our driveway. She saw him. We held our breath, waiting for a confrontation or worse. She walked toward him, and as she stepped into the pale yellow glow of the street lamp, she began to wail, a haunting guttural crying. He didn't say a word, and she kept asking questions, her sobbing getting louder and louder, echoing through the empty street. Eventually, they both got into the car and drove away. We didn't see them for 3 days. We didn't even know where their dog was. The wife eventually returned alone. She found the dog inside, and she told us she doesn't think she'll ever see her husband again. Whatever the real story is, drugs, debt, or marriage turned lethal, I've realized one thing. I don't think I want to know.